Hello, friends. How's it going, Jake?
I'm excellent. What a great day.
We got Sheetz here with us on what is a chaotically interesting day. I'm sure of all people, you need a happy hour right now.
I know, I do, and I really appreciate the previously scheduled, may I note, appearance on this show. You guys really love to reach out to me, and then I just kind of ignore it until there's a Starship launch, and then whenever that coincides, that's when I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
I mean, or we are the predictors of when the launch will actually happen.
This is true.
I like that
So,
too. I like
you
that
know,
too.
we should have you on every other week, and then there's always be fun.
Yeah, no, it's good. I had a lovely morning. It was so much fun to wake up to. And I was pissed because if they'd just gone 1 week earlier, I could have slept in an hour later because of the time change or whatever. But it was still fine. It was still fine.
So you did wake up for this launch?
I did. My body woke up naturally. 5:30 this morning. It was like, you should get up. There's something going on. You should go check it out. All right, let's do it. Let's go for it. You know?
Too good.
So it was great. It was destiny.
My body did not wake up normally, unfortunately. I had like 5 alarms set because I was just like this. There's a constant fear as a space reporter, I think, that launch windows are a suggestion, so that the one time that you don't, tune in on time when you need it to be, it goes like 30 minutes early, and you're just scrambling the whole rest of the time. But fortunately, orbital dynamics and all that mean that it's a nightmare that will never become a reality.
That's pretty true, yeah. Events will shift left by days, but never minutes. It's not a thing. Like if there was a minute selected, that's the minute.
Yeah, that's when it's going.
Sometimes they shift ahead by orbits that we've learned, lunar orbits.
Well, there's that.
Yeah. Oh
that
my gosh! When people were telling me like, all right, so Astrobotic's going to launch first, but Intuitive Machines is going to get there first, and I was like, yeah, that's not my area of expertise, so I'm going to trust you on that, but I have no idea why that is.
Correct, but you're not going to like why.
Yeah, exactly.
If I try and explain why, you're going to get really upset that I tried to go down this path with you, and we're just going to end it early.
I think we have other things we probably should talk about in the meantime.
Probably. They're complaining about time. Well, first of all, what are you drinking? You signed on here before Jake, and it was absolutely enormous. So I'm curious what that was.
So I've got a nice gin and tonic because I have not had any time to make anything fancier than pouring gin and tonic water into a glass with an ice cube. So yeah, that's
fancy as I ever get, and I love it. Yeah,
it kind of feels like the right vibe. I mean, Brooklyn, we got like the springtime vibes here,
nice.
So it's very nice, and it feels appropriate.
It's 77 degrees here, Jake. It's
so nice.
Pretty amazing. What do you got, Jake? Did you get anything good?
I've been
scavenging for something.
I did. No, I got a real thing this week. I went to the beer company, so
yes.
I've been into Star Wars lately.
Oh,
nice.
I found this one.
I don't know how I feel about the hop on the mask. As an element.
I dig it. I dig it as an element. It literally draws attention to the fact that like you are getting yourself in for a dark and stormy hop.
Your breath will smell like this on the way out. This filter thing.
Yeah, you would raspy breathing after a couple of these. It's one of those like thick, hoppy. We'll see.
I've got the most appropriate drink that anyone's ever had on this show, Jake. I'm back to the Starbase beers, the Lucky Launch Day Lager. I don't know why I said that so strangely, but look at this thing, Jake. This is courtesy of the large box of Starbase stuff that's still sitting behind me, and I'm working through these beers. So
those labels are great.
I know.
Awesome. They're so
good. The green, I even put the Kelly Green Eagles on for today. I always accidentally wear Kelly Green Eagles stuff very close to St. Patrick's Day, like by accident. Just probably because it's like every 4 days I have something Kelly Green Eagles on, so it's not that much of a shock. But it felt like the right vibe. Go Birds! So I'm cracking this open.
And they just got Saquon. Sorry to not get too far off topic.
We did.
My mom's side of the family is all from PA, and that's like such a homecoming since he was. Yeah. I mean, I watched him play in the Rose Bowl against USC. I don't even remember what year that was.
Years ago.
Like he is like such a like. We wish he played in PA professionally, and now that it is happening, like I mean, he's going to be selling so many used cars. It's insane.
That is 1,000% accurate. Yeah, I could probably pick the dealership that he'll get a deal with. That's incredible. Yeah, what a good reference, Jake. You have no idea how good of a reference that is. It's so good.
No.
It's so good. All right, listen. I asked Jake this before the show, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you can choose which things you want to compare this to. I will put today's Starship footage up against the Saturn V footage where I think it was Apollo 4 where they shot that epic video of like the interstage ring falling off, getting burned up in the engines a bit. I'm stacking it up against that in terms of space flight footage, and I think this one, now obviously like people walking around on the moon, driving a car on the moon, that's like a different category, right? I'm talking rockets, space flight hardware, doing beastly space flight things. I'm putting this one as the greatest of all time today.
Wow, that is a strong call. I mean, it's not a horrible take. Man, like,
Feel good about that.
Like, no, I mean, it legitimately makes a lot of sense as, you know, the unprecedented nature of it, the fact that it was like crystal clear, it looked gorgeous, it was incredible, and then the fact that everyone's sitting there being like, is this real? Like, this is insane. So I think that's, yeah, like I nothing comes off to the top of my mind that really matches it when you talk about, you know, rockets in Earth's orbit and all that jazz, which seems to be our informal category here.
That's our thing, yes. I mean, there's been some good ones. Rocket Lab had that first shot that they had of like the upper stage flying away from the first stage was pretty. That's up there in the rankings. There's some good shuttle stuff like the booster cam. That was always cool.
I see. This is just kind of a personal, like, you know, I feel maybe underrated shot, but the one that comes to mind for me is the first time we saw a Falcon 9 booster from separation to landing, like uninterrupted all the way top to bottom. That to me was just some of the most insane footage I've ever seen, because you stayed with it the whole time and it really gave you more perspective than I think I've ever gotten on any rocket webcast before, of one, just how huge this thing is, how fast it's moving, and, you know, how precisely it's maneuvering along the way. It doesn't just like drop itself back down off to Earth. So I think that is a really up there. It's pretty close for me, but I mean, Starship's crazy, and the really glorious, you know, plume of plasma around it is, you know, it's pretty amazing. So
yeah, man. I want to just give credit where it's due on your line there. You mentioned all that jazz, and we just kind of let that go by. And I want to make sure that we highlight that, because that was great. All the rockets and all that jazz is perfect.
Oh, dude, like that, when they started playing that music, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm here for it. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, like, you know, space elevator jazz. Let's do it.
It was truly incredible that like when that decision got made and who gave the green light to that is what I want to unpack that a bit.
Original composition, like, is that going to be up for like a Grammy?
It was Chris G, actually. Chris G, that's his new thing. Since he went to SpaceX, he's been doing in-house jazz for the webcast.
Yes. They hired him to start a combo.
Yeah, like, he's got a troupe. Yeah, it's a great crew there, you know. Dan Hewitt, I think he plays drums in it. It's the whole situation. That's great.
It was fun to see Dan on the broadcast. I was like, hey, look, this guy doesn't just, you know, tweet. He's like, he's back. He's alive. We missed him from the NASA days, so it's cool to see him back.
Yeah, totally good.
Same intonation and everything too, like that very calming.
Okay, this moment when it goes through like that upper layer of cloud layer, I was like,
yeah, baby.
Ridiculous.
I mean, the whole thing. Oh, it's a good time to switch.
Yeah, we were saying on the pre-show that it's like, you know how you have friends who have like young kids, and like you meet the kid, and then like maybe the next time you see them, like it's 6, 12, maybe 18 months later, like that kind of friend where you don't see very often. And then you catch up with them again. You're like, whoa, like your kid got really tall and is like speaking in full sentences now. That's what Starship felt like this, like from the last time we saw it. Like all of a sudden it's like doing maneuvers and it's got cameras and all this, like it's just like suddenly all capable all of a sudden. It felt very sudden and welcome.
Okay, so that is exactly what I tried to capture today, because That was the same exact thought I went through. So I'm really glad that I'm on a common strand here of thought because Lori Garver and I chatted for a little while after the launch, and basically to break down like why did this feel different than the previous two launches. And what it really came down to is the fact that like this could have delivered satellites into orbit. This was, by like traditional metrics of a rocket launch, a successful launch. And that difference of like, whoa, you grew up, like you're a big kid now. Like that's kind of what today felt like. And I mean, I would put big money on the fact that the next one's going to have, Starlink satellites on it. Like, why wouldn't we do that? That was exactly Lori's point to me. And like, I fully agree with you and her. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be Starlinks in the next one. There's got to be. Why wouldn't you, right? Like,
yeah, we talked about that last week. That this is the shift into the methodology that Falcon 9 flew with, which is like do a useful thing, test some stuff. Do a useful thing, test some stuff after, and that's where it's at. Booster went chaotic again. I really thought this was the flight, Jake, that I was gonna have my wing falls off and Starship goes spinny. Prediction come home. A couple years late.
Almost. We were almost there. It may have. We just not.
It may have. Yeah.
Well, actually, to the point, I don't know if you guys saw the post-flight update they put out on their website, but I actually verbally laughed aloud when I read this one line, which was they didn't do the relight because, quote, due to vehicle roll rates during coast. And I was like, yeah, we all were watching this thing just spinning like crazy, and I'm going like,
it's like,
it would have been like the Astra upper stage all over again.
Whoa. Too soon, but maybe not too soon because they're kind of gone now. So,
can we just go back a couple seconds here because this shot was when it gets like the most sci-fi after separation. Let's see, where was that little?
I'm impressed you can use the Twitter video player and live stream at the same time. That's impressive.
Look, that thing flying away, the booster flying away.
Yeah.
Or what is that? Was that the booster? No. What was that?
That's just pieces of Starship.
Just pieces. That's just pieces. That's just extra stuff. Still awesome.
I swear that right at the point where they started re-entry, there were a couple tiles went past the camera. I haven't gone back and looked, but live I was like, that one looks like a tile.
Yeah.
It looked like a big chunk of something. A lot of ice and stuff, but there was something that was not ice colored flying around in there too.
Well, and later in the coast, something exploded, right? Like a small sort of burst or something, because it kind of shook, and that's when all the pieces fell off in orbit or whatever, right? Yeah.
That induced the roll rate on orbit. Yeah.
Or at least made it really worse. Yeah.
Can we talk about the shark fin situation too? It flies like a shark. Does anyone expect this to fly like a shark? I did not.
Was that on purpose? Is the question.
That part seemed stable when in the coast phase. It was flying like a shark.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Didn't expect that.
Yeah, look, more bits going off.
More bits.
More
okay,
bits.
I have a question now.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so we think they're going to put satellites on it, but this is the thing that maybe throws a wrench in that, right? So they didn't get the relight done, which I'm kind of getting a vibe that they're really keen on actually doing in space, because now this is 3 flights in a row where they are adding the safety fallback of even if we don't light it, it's going to come back within within one revolution, right? So if they didn't do that, are they going to? Because if you want to deploy Starlinks, you got to get to orbit. You're going to have to be able to light that engine, right? So do they do that? I don't know. I'm wondering now. Are
That's fair.
They feel kind of gun shy about it, and I'm kind of curious about that.
I think they would, because we've seen them risk Starlink missions before as for example with Falcon 9, pushing reuse, and how many times they can refly boosters. We've seen them take that risk. Granted, that's a new level of risk, but I wouldn't be surprised, if they were we'll try the relight and the. No, go ahead.
Well, it's not the risk of the Starlinks, right? They'll happily throw those away. But if you reach orbit,
nobody gives a shit about the Starlinks, yeah.
And then deploy them, and then you can't relight. If the relight fails, you're stuck in orbit, and then it's Long March 5 all over again, except worse, right? So
yeah. Or do you do the inverse, Jake? You put Starlinks on, and you have to relight to make orbit, and then deploy the Starlinks.
Maybe.
But then, are you going to be able to relight to come out of orbit? You're in the same situation, right? So,
but
that's where I'm getting at, though.
They're going to have to do their first deorbit burn. But
exactly where I'm getting at is they can't do this forever, right? They can't stay in this spot forever. So, but again, maybe if there is something about the in-space relight being a challenge, which to me hits my ears very strangely for a company like SpaceX, and an engine like Raptor that's had all this flight time. But if you are, then maybe you do that tactic. You load a couple Starlinks on, and you might not want to put a full slate. You might want to test this weird Pez door out and just deploy like one. Yeah. You don't want the first one to get jammed in the door and then be stuck with a bunch of like lopsided cargo and try to do a reentry test with it. That's not going to be great. It's going to have unexpected roll rate on orbit, I think, if you do that. So. It is funny though, because you're right that is like a note of caution that has been in their planning. And even the move to the Indian Ocean, right? I speculated. The only thing I thought about this week that I hadn't thought of previously was that the point where they were re-entering was in daylight, as we can see from the video today. But Hawaii would have been darkness. So if they wanted to make sure that they had daylight for the video capture, once they were confident that they were going to be able to get video off of this thing, maybe that was the reason for the change.
Yeah,
I can't really come up, other than wanting more wiggle room between them and any other pieces of land, I can't come up with a lot of reasons for why they moved the trajectory so far.
Yeah.
Here's shark fin mode, by the way.
Shark fin mode.
See?
I like it.
Did not expect shark fin mode.
Put that into canon, shark fin mode.
It looks like an orca like underneath a big cruise ship. Just sneaking up on some unsuspecting passengers.
You think the edges of the tiles are always going to stay like that? Like this very unrefined edge where it looks like the finished part of your basement and the unfinished part of your basement? I don't know. Feels like they should smooth that out. Yeah, I guess you're right. You know.
Anthony and I are slowly describing all the pieces of a Pennsylvania like suburban lifestyle.
We're cracking into it. Oh my god, it's shockingly accurate. Is that not? Might not. It's like Mischief Night. I realize these are more regional things than I realized, but
yeah. Deep cuts.
What else we got on?
Just watch Always Sunny all the way through. It'll only take you like 4 years, and you'll be all caught up.
What a show, man! That show is just a gold mine. That's such a good show.
It really is.
I feel like that show for you is like Letterkenny for me.
It totally is. It's the same vibe. Those are cousins for sure.
Yep.
I always hear Americans talking about Letterkenny, and they're like, "This show is so funny," and I'm just like, "There's no way you're catching all these jokes. Like, there are some of these that are just so freaking niche that like there's just no possible way you have any idea what that means."
No, that's Arrested Development for me because I grew up in Orange County in California, and there's like some stuff in there that people laugh at. I'm like, no, you don't actually get that joke.
Yeah. We are not the same. We're both laughing at this joke, but we are not the same.
Oh man.
What else we got on Starship? Anything else in particular? I did appreciate that Bill Nelson's Twitter took a victory lap on this one. Like that was the thing we always were waiting on, right? That you could plant your flag and say, "This is Artemis, baby." Here it is.
The unqualified success, I think, is the biggest difference, right? He's like congratulated them each time, but there's kind of been this like, we hope that it's going to do well, and this was like a great successful launch, like full stamp of approval.
That's because they called up after that Intuitive Machines press conference. They're like, "What the hell? What the hell?"
Yeah, some of the early ones were very much like, "Oh, you're doing so good, buddy. Like, good. Here's your participation medal. Can't wait to see you try again."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here's the like.
This
I don't
is
know.
all this stuff.
Like, are those heat shield tile pieces, or it's so hard to get scale of stuff floating by? But
isn't there a point where right before that debris comes off, isn't there a shake on the camera? Like, I really feel like there was something that actually.
I think that was the first time the fin moved, and everyone realized this was mounted out on the fin.
No, I felt like there was like a vibration. Like maybe I'll have to go back and watch it really carefully, but I don't know. I felt like I saw a shake of some kind.
Are we Zaprudering this live on the show here? Okay, great.
Staring at this video. The podcast listeners are just going to absolutely love this segment of the
just
show.
Revel in our enjoyment of this. But
yeah, I mean, the fin kind of moves, but maybe I made this up. It was early.
No, I think it was right on here because there's not that much debris at the moment. So I don't know, man.
Right. All right.
I'll keep it running. Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
So now what?
So yeah,
Are they gonna? What's the vibe from here? Right? Like, I haven't been on Twitter
I
this
genuinely
afternoon.
believe
Do they need a
the
mishap
next thing
investigation or what?
they're opening one. They already said, yeah.
Okay.
So like we'll do the normal, rigmarole, but like the biggest difference we saw between 1 and 2 versus 2 and 3 was the number of actions that they had to take between the two. The time of the investigation didn't take as long. So, I mean, it feels like they're really starting to get some rhythm here, not just on the tech side of like getting it ready, but also on the regulatory side of the FAA being more comfortable with things and being able to sign off a little more quickly.
Yeah. Well, and the mishap on here is not like out of bounds, right? So like usually with these kind of things, the way I'm always learning new things about them, but the way I understand it is like, they pre-write the mishap procedure, right? And so it's like if this happens, we do these things, and then FAA says, okay, good, we like your plan, right? And so like these all felt like very expected failure modes. Like, yeah, okay, what if it doesn't re-enter? What if it, and so they probably have like all of that done. Like that report's probably done. Like, let's be honest, that report is probably written already, pre-written, and now they just file it and FAA stamps it, and great.
Yeah, the booster one probably is too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say for the booster, which is probably the closest thing to a mishap that you can describe here. Because look, this is the thing. I was talking to my editor about like how do we frame this? While we were all waiting for confirmation of like did it survive the blackout period or not, we were talking about framing, and a huge aspect of that conversation was like this was either going to come all the way down to the surface of the ocean and smash and break into little pieces, or it would break into little pieces and then smash into the ocean. Either way, like their outcome was kind of the same after re-entry. So like you can't be like, oh, I guess it exploded and it's a failure, or like they didn't complete the plan. You can't jump to that conclusion of that they didn't complete the flight, because the difference between it broke up a little higher and then it hit the ocean is more minute, and they honestly won't know, because the blackout period definitively to make a call on, hey, yeah, it did or didn't. And which is, I think, why you heard Dan on the webcast talking about like, we lost the ship 1, we didn't splash down 2. Like those are the things that they could say confidently, and that's it. Like, and hopefully we'll get some more detail here in the next couple of weeks, because that just what happened, I think, after reentry and during reentry is the thing that everyone's going to want to know.
And if you keep it within the ranges of debris that you stated, then you're in much better shape, right? The booster, especially, if I clearly lost control towards the end, but how close to the center of their target were they? If that was still way within the bounds of that, then it's very similar to the Falcon 9s that we've seen lost on the way back in, the one that went all crazy spinny that one time, which looked similar. I forget what flight that was. Do you remember what Falcon 9 I'm talking about, where it went like real spinny?
Oh yeah, that was 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
A while back. Yeah, it felt very similar to the booster today.
The reason I remember that one was, I want to say it was like 6 months-ish before Demo 2, because everyone was looking at that like, oh, is this something we need to be concerned about? And it did a splashdown instead. The other thing too, I mean, look, my dumb American ass had to check this, but they said 462 meters is when the RUD for the booster happened. That's 1,500 feet. I mean, that's really low altitude. This thing basically was like almost all the way back down before it actually disintegrated. So, like, to your point on the regulatory side of things, really tightly within the bounds of what was expected.
It's basically like this anomaly did not produce any more danger than an actual like nominal outcome, right? Like that's different from the very first launch where that explosion is sending concrete flying. Like that's not nominal. So there's extra danger there. Even if it was danger that was accounted for, it's still extra danger, right? Whereas this one like didn't actually, like they had already blocked that off, that whole area, right? Like they're already just any kind of booster coming in. There's no one in that area. And so the fact that it hits in one piece or 1,000 pieces doesn't really make a big difference, right? So yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, the first one was also crazy too, because witnessing it in person, you had no sense of like how much of that concrete was just being flung everywhere. But then I went back and watched the live stream, and you can literally see it peppering like the water, and that water is not very close to the launch pad. So that was just a wild experience to go back and watch it and be like, oh wow, yeah, that did a heavy damage to the pad. Versus this, you know, you watch it lift off, like, you know, it's cooking. I still am like truly floored that the steel plate is as effective as it is, and I'm curious to see, you know, like I would love to you guys to have like a concrete, you know, expert on if you haven't already, to be like,
let's do it.
so
That sounds ridiculous, and I love that. Yes.
Yeah, get some guy who like just nerds out about commercial concrete and have him on to explain like how durable, how much, like how long that concrete with the steel plate is going to last versus the fact that the normal stuff just got obliterated in one lot.
God,
I'd love to know that answer.
this is so good.
I
Usually
feel like
we
that
assign homework for the journalists that we bring on the show, and this is exactly the kind of dumb bullshit that I think we should be assigned. I love this.
My only worry on that is that like that the crossover of the use case of like really good at concrete and launching rockets, like that the Venn diagram of people is like the three guys that work at SpaceX right now.
Yeah. Well, they also definitely listen to this show, so I think that's totally within our wheelhouse.
Like, again, the PA theme is strong, but like get someone from like a steel factory who deals with heat tolerances. It doesn't have to be a launch. Like, I want a guy who's not a launch expert and he's like, yeah, okay, rocket's cool, but like knows concrete super well. And
we build everything out of
IFP
concrete down here. I can grab some
IFP
sort of albanil.
This is the best assignment we've ever received.
Can
Can you always give us the assignments that you know your editors will never approve you doing a story about, and then we'll do them because they're just like too stupid?
I'll pass off the ones that I'm like, hey guys, what about? And they're like, Michael, stop.
Right to Off-Nominal. That's what we want. Yeah.
Straight to
All right,
jail.
I'm putting it in our notes. Hold on. I'm putting it in our ideas doc.
Special
Find the
journalist.
concrete guy.
Special jail for journalists.
Put it in the batshit ideas folder where we have that Orion cooked out thing in there.
Yeah. We have a document that says crackpot. Neither of us remember why we made this document in our planning thing. It just says the title is Crackpot Theories, and the only line in it, I'm looking at it right now, says Airbus uses Orion as their own spacecraft. We have no memory of when we made this document, why we did it, and what that theory even means, but it's in our Crackpot Theories document, and we've never edited another entry.
We will never ever delete this document.
Airbus buys Lockheed Martin, and then
It's like, wait a minute.
Duh.
Airbus sees an opportunity to go after Boeing, and this is how they do it. Is they just come into their turf. Yeah. It's a great document.
Man. No idea.
All right, I'm putting this in the show ideas, though.
Okay, love it.
Find the concrete expert who is not interested in space.
See, this is the thing that I've found is more recently really interesting about reporting is finding people who don't know space stuff really well and then bouncing stuff off of them, because you get so much good feedback of like how the most normal people think about space. And I can still go talk to the space people, you know, just fine. But the folks who are quote unquote normal, if you will, are then like bringing back their more kind of visceral reaction of, is this significant? Do we care about this or not? And I think it's really interesting to see what moves that barometer and what doesn't when it comes to space stuff. Like, I think this is my favorite recent example. Like, the Starship launches have obviously gotten such a huge amount of attention, like not just within the space community, but you know, writ large. Intuitive Machines lander is like how much smaller than Starship, and was doing something that's so early developmentally, like really just trying to like, can we make this one thing stick, right? But in terms of capturing the public imagination and like the significance, I would argue had as much of an impact and as much attention as any of the Starship test flights. And I think it's really interesting because in the space industry, we talk about the fundamental changes of Starship and other things because we're in tune with those things. But we also have to not be in tune with like the rest of the populace on like, what do they care about? What makes a difference in their lives? And being able to send stuff to the moon is like something that's inspirational, and like sending 7,000 more Starlink satellites into orbit, not really.
I always meant to ask you this because I always think about you in particular. Are you the person?
I'm glad you think about me all the time.
Well, it's specifically about work, so watch
Okay.
it. But now it's about Pennsylvania suburban trivia, so watch out for that too.
I have
drawing
a boring
closer.
office job question that made me think of
Yeah.
you.
No, just straight up. Like, I've always noticed that NBC, both national and local, cover a decent amount of space stuff, and I'm always picking up on like which things and I'm always running NBC. All my sports are on NBC, so NBC is just the thing that happens when I turn on my TV. I'm loyal to NBC for you there. But who, like, is that you? Is that other people internally? How does it get decided? Like the time you're on nightly news or the time that a space story is on nightly news? What is that filter, and why does Intuitive Machines make it, but other ones might not?
That's a great question. I mean, you could get into there's like two kind of questions in there, which is like the assignment question of like, why do I do either TV hits or write articles for not just CNBC, but other NBC brands? And then also like who gets assigned to those things, and like why is there interest in those stories from those outlets? The second one is a question that you can kind of answer just by like reading through who they're writing to, like who is their audience, right? When I write for CNBC's audience, I'm writing for an investor case. Like the thing they care about the most with Starship is like, what's the business case? You know, how much money has SpaceX spent on this thing? How much, development cost does this stack up to the next thing? What's the payload? They care about the stuff that has financial implications. NBC's audience isn't going to care about that as much. They're more speaking to a broader audience that's interested in like, science news and the latest, space exploration. So they're going to speak much more to like this is something that, can deliver Artemis crews to the moon. And they're going to talk about kind of the space exploration aspect of that. So there's like a distinct difference in philosophy of like what audience they're serving. As far as it goes for me and like assignment wise, it really is just kind of a case by case and like relationships that you cultivate over the years. I've contributed across like all of our different brands because there aren't many people within the broader like NBC News group that includes like Sky News in the UK to like your NBC regional outlet, right? And I can contribute to all of those because I'm at an NBC company. But whether or not they want me to is a different question. Whether or not they have a story that's like kind of fitting. I mean, a great example of this is, when I am on talking about Starship, I really try to tailor it to whichever audience I'm speaking to. And that's the important thing to remember is like the person on the other side of the camera is very different depending on what, outlet or broadcast you're joining. So it's really like I've, built relationships with producers at different shows, and they know to come like, oh yeah, CNBC has the guy who's like dedicated to the space beat. But then like a great example is like Tom Costello is our, kind of solid everyday man when it comes to aerospace and aviation for NBC. So like he's doing the Today Show hits and, the interviews with the Inspiration 4 crew about like raising money for St. Jude and why they're doing that mission, right? Whereas for me, like that one, wouldn't make as much sense for me to go on the Today Show as it does for him. So like they're going to give that assignment to him. However, I would be happy to do it, and I do it when other people want me to, but like I'm always kind of figuring out like where are people looking for a need and like how I fill that gap. And it's just like it's kind of a full like spectrum of different opportunities. For example, like on the first Starship launch, I did TV hits across a whole bunch of different outlets in the NBC brand. This one, there's less of a need, and they have like general folks that are going to be able to speak to it for a 60-second hit, and a lot of them, NBC can pick up my article and put it on their site as a like this is CNBC's, but it shows up on NBC's website. That might just be what they wanted for this this particular mission. So like it really depends case by case, and it's kind of a weird part of media in that like it's really the audience and like then the producers and editors who are dictating what reporters are getting used on different assignments and
or even like what happened that day. Like I'm just always shocked. Sometimes we're going to commercial break and here's 30 seconds where we're talking about like Crew 7 launched the ISS or Crew 8 did this. Like there's just sometimes random things that drop in where if that had on a day where there's like all sorts of other stuff going on in the world that just wouldn't make the cut or something, but
yeah,
I always try to keep in touch with it because it helps me, like you're saying, orient to, Gen Pop. What is Gen Pop interested in on space news? I like to try to stay in touch. What is the concrete guy? What are his thoughts on this? Where's he at?
Yeah, exactly.
He's out there somewhere. We got to find him.
We got to find him.
Yeah.
And you will. Just give Quick Crete a ring. They'll hook you up.
I am an Italian from New Jersey, so I feel like I know concrete people.
There you go.
I can definitely feel like I have a connection. Yeah. Does everyone feel good about Starship? Because I've got like 8,000 other topics on this list.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should
good.
talk about some stuff that Michael's actually working on most of the time instead of the hijacked launch, right? I should talk about like Astra, or I don't know what else you got covering on your docket.
I mean, so we got Astra, we have the Terran Orbital like acquisition situation with Lockheed Martin. We've got the whole like, is ULA going to actually get sold or not? Like. Like the fact that it's now been a year since Eric first broke that story and that hasn't actually happened. I mean, there's all the signs are pointing to it. Jeff's selling all that stock. You know, it looks like Blue's going to come out a winner. We can get into all the like, you know, does this deal make sense kind of questions if you guys want to. But there's that story.
Please.
I think is interesting. And then like
so confused.
Intuitive Machines kind of takeaways, like what's up next for the CLIPS program. You know, they're 1 for 2. Like politically, we have the budget. Like my newsletter today was supposed to be about the most recent budget, you know, requests, and then that got booted because Starship. So that's where I think like there's a lot of good questions there about like, ooh, you know, NASA took quite a hit with this budget request. Space Force even, you know, came in a little under what they were asking too. However, now their budget dwarfs NASA's. So like. They're blowing away and cooking along. So, you know, we at least know where our priorities continue to lie. So, I mean, there's so many different stories, I think, that are out there. I'm trying to keep up as best I can. I remember I came back from, like, Christmas, New Year's vacation, and I don't feel like I've caught my breath since then. Like, because I literally landed on a red eye from visiting my folks in California, and Vulcan had like launched a couple hours prior, and that's like I haven't stopped since then.
Where do you want to start, Jake?
Sounds about right.
Should we unpack what's going on with Vulcan?
Vulcan, ULA.
Well, the
Blula?
ULA side of it.
Blula?
Yeah.
I call it Blula. That's what
Blula.
Blula.
Well, I've heard Blue LA,
Blue LA,
but like kind of like MLA, like Commander MLA, but you know.
Yeah.
I
like Blula because it sounds stupid and there's no way they're going to use it.
I just don't understand. I cannot figure this one out. I really cannot figure this one out, other than it being just like a incredibly anti-competitive move, which if you know me and you follow me for years, is the least likely thing I'll ever say. Like that's not that's more Jake's wheelhouse than my wheelhouse, but like, cannot figure out.
Chance that like antitrust shuts it down? Like, is that a possibility?
That's what I said up front when I was talking about this with Eric Berger on Miko, that like I don't know that acquisitions go through right now. Adobe could not buy Figma, like, which I understand spiritually more than technically, but this just, and it's weird too because it isn't defense contractor consolidation, but it's not that. It's not entirely not, but yeah. Even before that, the only reasonable explanation I can come up with for why Blue would buy ULA is that they're worried about ULA getting turned loose via private equity or something and it being a viable competitor to them in the future. And that's the only reason I can come up with it, which then is like right on Front Street. I don't know if that's really healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I will say from a competitive landscape, my preferred outcome was always like, I want to see 3 different heavy lift companies going, you know, toe to toe in the US. Like, I think that is the best thing for everybody. I including Blue Origin. Like, I think it's best for Blue if they don't buy ULA, and that's my personal opinion. Like, that's not
I'm with you,
sort
man.
of factually grounded thing, but it's more just this idea that you're kind of either you're telling everyone who's worked on New Glenn for years, like, sorry, we actually need to like kind of bolster things a little more. Like what you guys been doing for years isn't quite good enough, or you're like turning around and shutting Vulcan down. And neither of those are really great things. And I think like Blue has done a great job of showing off like, hey, we are making progress on New Glenn. Like we rolled it out to the pad. We did a bunch of testing, like things. They're actually starting to show some stuff about New Glenn. And like, as far as we can tell, be much more aggressive than they have before. And huge credit to, you know, the new CEO, Dave, and like what they're trying to change the culture there. I just feel like buying ULA completely counteracts what they've, like the direction they've started to head in the last few months. And I think it's bad for ULA. And I think Like, I would love to personally, like, the whole idea of private equity group, usually people are like, oh my gosh, they suck all the money out of a company. Like the common trope of like why private equity would be bad for a company's future. But I could see it very much from ULA is in really good hands with Tory. He's shown he's a capable CEO. He can deliver and be like very, very effective. They just need serious capital to scale this thing and like try to at least bring it into the ballpark of Falcon 9. I actually think that's a pretty achievable goal. Very still difficult.
Capital and authority,
a lot of money
right?
to
Authority is that big one that he's not ever had, right?
The Unchained. We always say Tory Unchained.
Yeah.
We need the Unchained Launch
Tory
Alliance.
Unchained.
Like that's what we need, you know?
Yeah, I'm 1,000% with that. And it feels like to me a private equity operator who comes in and like knows their way around national security companies like this. And that's why I was like the Cerberus like reported bid made a lot of sense to me. They could look. I mean, look what they've done with Stratolaunch. We just saw them do a hypersonic flight recently. Stratolaunch a few years ago, after Paul Allen passed, it kind of felt like that wasn't going anywhere. And Cerberus has done a really nice job of like making something very specific with it and letting them run with it. And I would love to see the same thing happen with ULA. I just don't. And again, another separate question. If PE doesn't buy it, I don't get why Lockheed's not buying it. But at the same time, I also get why Lockheed's not buying it because of the FTC problems, because they, got shut down on the Aerojet deal. But then, like, from a regulatory
I don't know, man. It's a good time to be like, we're just getting Boeing out of this. Like, it's a pretty good time in the world to say we could just do better without Boeing. Like, it's a pretty defensible moment.
Yeah, politically, I mean, that like you have all the capital you'll ever have there. So I there's so many different pieces of this. It feels like this crazy onion where you can peel it from different directions and you keep ending up with like a different like flavored apple in the middle. And you're like, okay, but like the last time I peeled this onion, it was a Granny Smith. And now, it's just a classic sweet red apple. Like, I don't really.
Here's another one. Can I give you another onion to peel? Like, what if, number one, the purchase price for ULA sounds pretty cheap, if you ask me. What if they were like, hey,
it's not the upfront cost.
Well, what if they were just like, we just really like the launch sites that they have and we don't feel like waiting 10 years or going through some other rigmarole. We just really want those launch sites and it's like a real estate deal. Like, that's maybe not the worst angle to look at it from.
I think it is.
Yeah. All the facilities and the launch sites.
I think it's an access and infrastructure play at, in kind of best case scenario for Blue. I totally agree. Yeah. Like, it's
like best case for me is like they use Centaur, right? Like it's Centaur IP, which is like the only like super valuable IP that ULA has. Let's be honest, right? Like they don't make their own engines, and so it's like you got a first stage tank, and then you have this beautiful upper stage. That's like the only chunky thing they have, right? So
slap some new engines on that. Yeah.
Whose engines? Where?
It doesn't matter. Any other ones than the ones that they're on there right now.
Hey, but those engines did work, which I was like, again, another credit to like, look, Blue, like you've got this great momentum going for doing your own thing. Keep at it. Like, don't go down this acquisition route. But I don't know. And I think the combination of the infrastructure, but then just like the national security contracts. I mean, you're literally buying into NSSL, which everyone remembers, NSSL Phase 2, Blue felt very snubbed by it, even though they'd won the like $500 million in development funding for New Glenn. So you can see why like they would be like, all right, let's shore that up and make sure that we're in this round.
Should we do Astra? Astra seems fun to talk about, Jake.
I feel like we should do Astra.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, man. I don't. Okay, there's like this frantic like heroic effort to try and like not let this company fall under, and I don't understand why. Like I like, what are we saving at this point? I don't really get it. Like what is the ROI on like this year or so? With 2 years now, how long has they been fighting to like save this company?
Yeah, basically since the last launch failure.
Yeah, when was that? that 23 or was that 2022? Yeah.
Was it 22 or 21?
Man.
I mean, when was the spinny Off-Nominal? That was not last year's, right? That was the year before, right?
That was No, that was 2022. Yeah, Kool-Aid Man.
Yeah, June 22 was the NASA Hurricane CubeSats, which was the last one.
It's like 2 years of trying to rescue this company from death.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I understood like the mojo of like, let's make things super cheap and just yeet them into space.
Yeah.
That like this is a story we see time and again, I think, throughout the space industry. I don't think it's anything unique to Astra, which is like you can have even like a decent business plan, and I don't even know necessarily if this was a great business plan because we all know how the launch vehicle market is in terms of margins. But like the biggest thing was that you have to execute, and you have to execute in a capital efficient way. And it just didn't seem like they were able to kind of find that balance between we're going to make stuff really cheap and we're going to make stuff that works. And that's where more often than not, I feel like I find people who make the mistake of like spending, they're like, we're going to make it more expensive so that it works. And then that's what kills them. And this was like we kind of spread everything too thin trying to like chase the bottom dollar, but then it didn't work very effectively. I mean, granted, they did make orbit twice. I'm not going to like hold it against them at any point of like, oh, you didn't achieve anything. Like from a technological standpoint, like they did a lot more than most other U.S. rocket startups in the last 20 years. So I'll give them that. But like, you then have to execute on making it reliable. And I mean, it's not just like a SpaceX thing. It's a known, hey, like when it comes to launch vehicles, if you don't demonstrate reliability, customers aren't going to sign with you. And like that's your death knell, and your salespeople are just kind of chasing anybody who will listen to you.
Yeah, like I'm just really confused because like in 2 years there should have been enough time to put together a proposal to get the funding you need to make Rocket 4, right? Like if Rocket 4 is viable and the business plan is good, like you would have gotten it by now. And
so that's where like macro econ conditions come into play, and I think that's like that. I mean, that was the thing that crushed and still is hurting a lot of these space packs, even the decent ones where you're like, okay, that's a decent business, but it's trading at $4 a share. That's kind of ouch. But even with Astra, you run into this problem where no one wants to deploy capital, even if you have a great business plan. Everyone's just like, market conditions are really rough, and you're trying to avoid diluting, and you're trying to avoid diluting. And then by the time that you finally were like, okay, I guess we have to raise something, you're not be able to get very much. And it's like, you're kind of already behind the 8 ball and all of that. So there's this kind of like very slippery slope that the launch failure combined with the fact that the economy really turned right around that time it's just brutal. And then you have like the broader capital markets looking at space companies being like, or not even just space companies. This is kind of my beef with everyone who's like, oh, look, all of the space backs are just crappy. Was like, yeah, you're lumping together a bunch of businesses that shouldn't have gone public with other ones that are like, maybe this went public a little early, but it could make sense as a publicly traded company. And you're kind of just treating it as like, oh, you're all just burning money and therefore you're the same. So that's where I think, it kind of unfairly, there's a lot of space packs that get grouped there. But like, yeah, Astra was like so like little revenue. And then you had the problem with like, they bought Apollo Fusion, which seemed like a possible like solid revenue stream going forward. And then you had a bunch of like their senior folks leave. So then you're out of the talent that made Apollo Fusion, what it was. So, and we saw that like the last year with, the contracts were a little bit, slower. The deliveries were getting slower. Like stuff wasn't happening. It's like, we did it. All this circle going down.
Yeah. We did a deep dive on the financials in one show. We just like went through like literally like did a show going through like 10 Qs and stuff. Like, it was like the worst show ever.
You're describing the idea of a fun Friday night. Come on, man.
Right. Yeah, we should have had you on. Like,
honestly, also, the guy who gave us an assignment to have a concrete specialist on the show. So let's watch it.
But I mean, it was like, because Chris Kemp is always talking about like, oh, the margins on Apollo Fusion, they're so fat. You have no idea how fat these margins are. Like we're so healthy because of these fat margins. And it's like, but they're shipping like 700K revenue a year. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's 100% margin. You can't fund a rocket company on that. Like it was just irrelevant. And so I don't know. I'm so confused about the length of effort still going into this. Like, I don't know. You love something, I guess you can't let it go. but maybe that's all it is. I don't know. I can't figure it out. We'll see. Now it's private. We'll see what's going on with it, right? But
yeah, I don't know if the going private was just like an avoid bankruptcy kind of situation. I know that obviously, like you're talking about shareholders that lost 90+% of their value, which like and you had a bunch of big names in there. Yeah, like it wasn't like small backers who got in on like the pipe and other stuff like that. So we'll see.
Jake, this is what I was saying last week, man. People got to hire us. We could have avoided all that lost money for those people.
If Chris Kemp had just called us 2 years ago.
No, not him. The investors that were like, let's do it.
Yeah. 2 years ago, dude, pull out, get out.
Yeah. No, man, we know where it's going. We could have 2 years. We knew way before that. We were on this beat, man. This Virgin Orbit, I was on this beat. I got a good, again, we were talking about this on the show I did earlier with Neil from K2 that I'm trying to offer vibes as a service for space companies because our vibes detector has been, I would say, pretty damn accurate over these yeit's So
except the problem is that you run into that, like anyone who you're like, yeah, the vibes are off, they're like, not paying you, sorry.
It's true. I want to hear people that say this is a good decision, but it just never. Astra thing was, and I don't have a great opinion of the like where this all started from and the general outset idea that Astra had. Same with Virgin Orbit. I just never was in on those. Spin launch, obviously, another one that we don't have good vibes about, but maybe on a different planet for spin launch. The other two never made sense on any planet to me. The Apollo Fusion thing does make me sad though, because like you were saying, there was a huge shedding of talent right off the bat, and it just kind of like stopped existing to the same extent. It wasn't as healthy of a version of what Rocket Lab did with Sinclair and Planetary, where that has really flourished. Maybe we could talk about them for a second too. That like, they are still a launch company, but boy howdy, they don't really look like it based on financials.
They're a minority launch company now. They're a space services company now, right? Like it's true. It's a real true thing to say, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I just pulled up the like Rocket Lab Q4, and it like when you look at this of what they've been able to build, and I think this is the interesting thing was like a year ago. I fully agree with what Jake's talking about here, which is they're a space company with a launch business that helps get that stuff into orbit. But the funny thing was like the launch Electron business is actually kind of picked up. Like the addition of HASTE has really kind of been this really key thing that I think has been pretty underrated, I guess is the right word, where they have been able to build in and kind of bulk up the Electron backlog. And Pete's been on record so many times saying we have never launched late because a vehicle wasn't ready. It's always been like a customer, a payload that wasn't ready. And I think that's a great way to then diversify yourself against that, which is you have both the hypersonics missions and the regular Electron business kind of flowing at the same time. But like they ended Q4 with $1 billion backlog in contracts, like signed deals, which when we talk about it, like if you notice with space companies, when people talk about backlog versus pipeline, like you always want to make sure that people are, really direct about what that represents. But for them, it's like, they have contracts that are deals done representing those dollars. And so the fact that they added 25 Electron launch deals last year actually really surprised me. I would have expected like, okay, you've got, a nice, healthy manifest moving forward, but they added quite a lot. And then you add in the fact that they like got their foot in the door with PWSA, which is my other new favorite thing to like track, because I'm trying to like slowly build up my repertoire of like how many large government programs for space companies that I'm keeping tabs on. So I started with NSSL because, rockets, that's fun. Everyone likes to hear updates there. And now I'm really been focused on PWSA. I have a spreadsheet like tracking those deals and how much is going there. And it's been really interesting to see who's not only winning the most, but then the fact that you've got folks like Rocket Lab and Sierra Space tucking in there and being like, yeah, we'll take $500 million there and like we'll show you we can deliver on those deals. And the cool thing for Rocket Lab, I think, was like they even showcased in their quarterly report with their whole like, hey, we now have made the Photon spacecraft actually a line of different spacecraft. This one specifically, this one's for the PWSA. And like they're tailoring it and they're like, we're going to have a production line pumping out. And that's what matters for the future, which is when we get into these additional bids where PWSA and SDA want to build out the constellation bigger, a la Starlink, then they're like, all right, yeah, so we'll do a $2 billion deal next time.
Yeah. The Rocket Lab biz dev is like a force, right? Like they're just out there like, where can we make sales? Like, okay, we can sell stuff over there. Let's do it. Let's make a thing. Like they must have one of those good crews that's just like, the perfect kind of salesperson that just says yes before they even have anyone actually building anything behind the scenes, right? So, those poor engineers that just come back every week, they get a call like, okay, listen, this is what we're gonna do. We told them that we could
told them we could give them just the bottom half of our rocket. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool, right?
I guess, yeah. I'll do that.
Yeah. We told them our orbital rocket could just not go orbital. Do they want that?
Yeah, what if we left off the top half? It seems plausible when I was talking to the guys, so I figured we'd say yeah.
Yeah. The DoD
seems a bit hasty, don't you think? And they're like, that's it. You've got it. I nailed it. It came together in a minute, for sure.
Yeah.
It's true, though. I mean, that is like the kind of space company I've always enjoyed is those that feel gritty, like that they are just figuring out, what is the thing that we have now? This is where we're heading. This is where the market's heading. How do we find like the common denominator between those and then keep going in that direction? Those are the ones that seem to make it, rather than, this is my idea. God willing, this is my idea. That's as far as I got. It's like, all right, I don't know. Does anyone want to fly on your rocket that is super cheap and can fly a lot, but you only get halfway there half the time? Or was there no interest in that ever?
It's the ones that understand the priority of show and tell, right? The process of show and tell. Show and then tell. Like, don't go parading stuff around that you're actually never going to like show up with. And so, like, you can talk about a lot of, here's how we're going to compete, and here's how like we're, going to be successful in this market. And by the way, it has a $100 billion TAM and blah blah blah. And like
all the hockey stick charts and
sure, like let's make up numbers and renderings and we'll go from there. But like the folks who do the like showing first and like deliver on that, it's such a clear tell on like what makes them successful and what makes them effective.
Yeah, nailed it.
What are you tracking for the next little bit of time here? Are you taking a break because it's been a while, 3 months, or you got something else in the hopper?
I wish I could just go sleep for the next week if I could, but that's not going to happen. No, so the biggest thing I'm tracking for the next month is probably the what'd you call it, the Blula. I'm going to start using that instead of Blue LA.
Blula.
The Blula deal, and then Starliner, which is now early May or like mid-May or whatever, but like. That's probably the next biggest thing on my docket where I'm like, that I really want to, be ready for as a reporter. I want to make sure I like understand all about it and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple stories that I've like been playing around with like features and stuff like that, which is always nice, but I'll probably be able to get to those when, the Q4 earnings season's officially done. We have Redwire here tomorrow. So Redwire is another one where like, you talk about an amalgamation of different companies that they brought together. But like you said, gritty, like they've been able to, really get things rolling, start making some money. I'm curious to see, where do they go from here? So Q4s are always an awesome opportunity to see that reflected. I think, Redwire tomorrow is my biggest thing to watch. And then we've got Starliner coming up here soon. And I think we'll see some more acquisitions in the first half of this year. It feels like this whole consolidation process we've seen in the last year is not done. The other thing, I need to check in with them, actually. This is so I'm giving myself an assignment. I need to check in with the OneWeb Eutelsat folks about like they recently were talking about how they're kind of delaying the plans for OneWeb Gen 2, and I really want to get into the nitty gritty of like why they made that decision, and is it a we don't think we can get the capital right now? Is it a operational like we're happy with Gen 1 right now situation? There's a lot of different potential reasons there, but I'm kind of curious because everyone just talks about Starlink all the time and like forgets that OneWeb exists, and I really want to like kind of check back in on that business and be like, hey, so how's this going?
Now what? Yeah.
All right.
I mean, they went through hell. Like those guys went through so much to get that first gen constellation up. And technically, I think they still have satellites that are captive in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, I think those are lost forever, aren't they?
I wonder where those are, man. That's such a story I want to.
It'd be really great to see the financials on that. Like, when do they write those off? Like,
well, probably the day after Russia invaded Ukraine.
Lost.
But like,
terror.
I remember I think it was at Satellite that year. Neil Masterson told reporters, he was like, "Yeah, they're gone. I'm never seeing those satellites again." And we're all like, "It's a lot of money just to like be like, eh."
A wild story. I hope we find someday like where they are. I don't know if they're
kind of
they'll
like
be in like a Baran hangar.
Yeah, exactly. Or like somebody's
All the old OneWebs.
These are the OneWeb satellites that were for communications and then held captive.
Yeah. This is somebody's like foyer ornament.
They'll show up on eBay at some point.
We're gonna buy one.
Nice, like
real cheap price, only this many rubles.
We'll try to get one someday. That'll be great.
Yeah, you gotta fund the war effort somehow, Anthony.
When you put it that way,
one of those OneWeb satellites would look great, like right in that curtain there.
Just hanging out. Yeah, like a that'd be. I mean, that's a piece of history to own. The satellites that were stolen, the first space piracy.
Yeah,
that's great.
Okay, so this is the funny thing. Whenever people bring up firsts, and sorry to derail things, I know we're over time already, but like whenever people bring up firsts of space related stuff, when you think about like the space history and industry and like the really like kind of buccaneering that we've seen in the last half a century, whenever someone brings up a first, I'm like, is it really though, or have we just not heard of that first before because that story was never told? Because it was like a black site project in the Pentagon somewhere.
Some DoD space historian just shaking their head at every freaking webcast and press release. Like, no, we did that in 1986. Nope. No, we did that in 1982. No, we did that in 1994.
They just like wake up and see headlines and are like pissed every day. Like they're just like
just constantly angry.
Largest deployable structure. Do you even know? Do you know what I did?
Do you know what the moon's made of?
Oh, Redwire earnings tomorrow. There it is. Jake, what are we doing next week? Oh, next week's a fun one. I think we might get yelled at next week. I don't know. I'm unsure.
We might get. Yeah. No, so we've been talking about clips a lot, and we've been asking a lot of questions about how the heck Clips works and how the science works and what the heck are they doing with this Clips program? Like, what is this? What is going on with this? And we had some friends from Johnson Space Center call us and say, hey, we'll come on and tell you all about how this is working. And so that's good. We're excited to talk to them and learn about kind of how some of the payloads get processed into this and how does it work when they crash, I guess, is what we're going to talk about. But, we'll go into some stuff. We'll see. We don't really know what's going to happen.
We don't. I said it feels like kind of like annual review vibes. Like, I don't know what I'm getting into in this one, so we'll find out what we did wrong. Provoked.
Yeah. I expect to get some tongue lashings for my horrible Johnson Space Center conspiracy.
I can't wait.
We'll see how it goes.
I can't wait for that. Yeah. Roll that out there. And if you're a concrete professional, hit us up. Simon here that we need to make good on.
Send us an email at concrete@offnom.com and we will get you
100% legit email address if you or your family members are in the concrete business.
It actually, port forward straight to Michael.Sheetz at NBC.
And your boss, yes. All right, y'all. Michael, thank you so much for hanging out. Everybody else, we will see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao, everybody.